What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Living Roots podcast with Stacey and Danielle. This is episode 2, and we are going to cover why real food matters. So today we're just going to bounce back and forth. We both have different notes here. I do want to just kind of make a point and let you guys know that when Danielle and I pick these topics, we like to have the real conversation live with you guys. So we don't sit here and really tell each other exactly what we're going to go through or write down everything off a script or anything like that. We like to have real conversations because again, that's kind of what the podcast is about, having real conversations with people. She might say something that I don't agree with, right? And that would be something where, okay, let's work through that together, just so you guys can kind of see how to do that with friends and family and things like that.
We do have notes, if you watch the YouTube video, you can see we do have notes written down, but just so that we stay on track and don't forget the certain points maybe that we wanted to touch on. But yeah, my notes are bullet points, not a whole written.
Exactly. Yep. So with me, you guys know that I have a farm and we have chickens, so we have eggs, and we have Daisy, our dairy cow, and then we also have some beef cattle. So anytime it comes to food, that homemade farmy style is probably what you'll always hear me talk about, just because it's near and dear to my heart, and it's just the season of life that I'm in right now. So we just recently got our dairy cow, Daisy. When did we get her?
I was just talking to Nick. I think it was maybe only
it was
a month or two ago.
Yeah,
It's fairly recent, new.
2 months. I think right around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right after. Did we have her? I don't know. Right around Thanksgiving. But so we're super new to having her. But when we got her, she was already milking. So she had a baby, and she had been milking. So we kind of jumped right into it. And everything that I have learned about farming, from cows to chickens to gardens, everything has been through YouTube. I do not come from a farm family. We are from New Jersey and we used to live at the beach, so if you are looking not farm land at all. So if you are interested in farming and you think that you can't do it because you don't come from that background, that's just not true. There's so much information and so many good resources on YouTube. So we jumped right in, and the funny thing about getting a dairy cow for me is that I don't like milk. I have never liked milk since a child. The only way my mother could get me to consume milk was in sugary cereals, and I would drink it down just because it tasted like the cereal. So I'm a cow owner that doesn't drink milk, but I actually have started drinking it a little bit more and trying to work it into different recipes and stuff because of all the health benefits that I'm learning about raw milk. So raw milk can sometimes be a little bit of a hot button topic depending on who you ask, because there is a lot of different information out there and sometimes people just don't know a lot about it. But raw milk in and of itself is like a superfood. It has full fats, it has all these good enzymes in it, good bacteria. It's basically like a probiotic for your gut.
It's alive.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is something that I'm learning too. It has all these beneficial things that haven't been highly heated or highly processed out of it, so all it's going to do is benefit your body.
100%. And a lot of the times, if you're lactose intolerant or dairy sensitive, a lot of the times what I'm finding is that it's not actually the dairy itself, it is what that dairy has gone through and the process of it, of breaking everything down and changing the natural state of it. That becomes way harder to digest and break down. That is not how God intended milk to be. And that is more commonly what people are struggling with, not so much the dairy itself. Not every case, I'm sure some people just truly cannot handle it. But I think for most cases, that's probably more of what we're seeing. So I'm really big on raw milk. You cannot buy that in food stores. That's not something that they're going to sell. It's not FDA approved and all the things. But you can, if you can't get your own cow, you can go to your local farms and dairies. Some farmer markets might be able to sell it if they put a stamp on it that says for animal consumption only. If you see a stamp,
on what the laws are in your state.
Yes, exactly. I think in North Carolina we can sell raw milk if it's for animal consumption only. Yes. So if you see that, stamp on there, you can
why.
ask them about it. Yes, yeah, it might not truly just be for the animal, but yeah. So that's kind of something that I'm learning a lot about, and we could probably have a whole podcast just on raw milk one day. But yeah, so I'm really big on raw milk and like fermented foods, good probiotics, all of the good things for your gut. The next thing I want to talk about really quick is eggs, because this is something, again, that we supply here on our farm, but really confused me in the stores. This was actually when I was making the healthier life swaps. That was one of the first things I noticed. When I would walk into the food store, there's like 10 different brands of eggs that you could buy, and with all these different prices, and it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here? And some would say cage-free, some would say free-range, and some would say pasture-raised. Those three to me, and a lot of them had that organic stamp on there. So to me, I just thought they were all good. I was like, okay, these are all great options. They're, maybe just using different words, but I didn't really think that there was a definite or a separation between them. So that was actually one of the first things I looked up. So I just quickly want to go over for you guys, if you're in that same boat and you're not sure the difference between cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised, I just want to clear it up for you real quick. So I have some notes here. So cage-free means that simply that the birds don't live in cages, just as it says. But each bird is only required to have 1.5 square feet of space.
Which is less than the state.
Exactly, yes. So those pictures you see of those chicken houses where all the birds are on top of each other, they're not in cages, that's cage free.
Technically.
Yep,
right.
Exactly. So, and even though you get your own 1.5 square feet, they're not going to keep to their own boundaries. So they're walking on top of each other, stepping in feces, walking over each other, stepping on those eggs, all that stuff. So, that's not really much quality of life to me. No. And it also, just because it says cage free, it doesn't mean that they've ever seen the light of day or ever stepped foot on soil or grass.
Right.
So usually they're not. And then we have free range. Free range, which I feel like I bought that the most for a long time. Free range just usually had a prettier picture on it of like a field or something. So that's what I bought for many years. So free range is a step up from cage free, but it's still probably not as good as you think. It simply just means that the chickens have access to the outdoors during their production cycle, but it doesn't mean that they have ever stepped outside. So they could cut a little window or like a little door so that during the production cycle they have the opportunity to walk outside. But if you know anything about animals, they kind of follow what the other one is doing. So unless you get one brave chicken that's going to go through that door, even though there's access or a crack or whatever that they could go out, doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't going to do that, right? So, that just means that the opportunity is there. And then it doesn't specify what that outdoor area is. That might just be dirt, it might be grass, and that would be great. It could be a cement pad. It just means outdoors, okay? So the outdoors, again, could just be a cement pad.
It's up to
there's no benefit there, exactly. And they're only required to have 2 square feet of space. So you go from 1.5 feet to 2 square feet.
Quite the pasture.
Yeah. So that was very misleading. But again, like the green fields, I would kind of see on the boxes and stuff.
Marketing.
Yes. That's a whole episode too. And then the last one is pasture raised. And if you're not going to just, a farmer's market or your local farmer or a friend with eggs or raising chickens yourself, pasture raised is what I suggest that you look for, because this means that each bird has ample amount of outside room, at least 108 square feet or more, and they have access to barn cover. So that means that they're pretty much out all day and they come in or they get shelter when they need it. So those are the chickens that are out walking around on grass, picking bugs, eating whatever is out there, and having some quality to their life, which
sunshine, which is only going to benefit the eggs and
exactly the calcium, all the things. So if you're looking for eggs and you're kind of stumped on that, pasture raised is what you're going to want to look for. So do you have anything else on like that?
Yes.
topic?
So along with the eggs, a lot of the times you'll see like vegetarian fed, and you're like, oh, okay, that must be good, right? But like you just touched on, chickens aren't vegetarians. They are, if they're given the opportunity, which to live the life that they're supposed to, they're outside, they're in a field, they're eating bugs. They're eating worms, they're eating all these things. along with, yes, like grass and, you know, whatever. But so vegetarian fed doesn't necessarily always mean that something's good.
Yeah.
That's not their natural state. That's not something that they would normally, given the opportunity, like a wild chicken or a wild chicken, but you know what I mean? Like that's not a natural diet for a chicken, is to be a vegetarian. So that's another thing that I think they just slap on there to look good, and if you don't know, then you don't know, and you're just thinking like, okay, well, cool, vegetarian fed chicken, like that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
Just like we could have a whole greenwashing or like all natural marketing scheme podcast episode, because there's a lot of these like little things that happen and you have no idea. You're trying to be a conscious consumer and you're trying to make the best choice you have, and unless you have your laptop or you're on your phone and you're just like, you know, researching every single thing, it is really hard to make the good decisions that you're trying to make. So
absolutely, yeah. So again, that's just kind of my take on, you know, the stuff that we produce here, which again is milk and eggs. They're so beneficial when you get it the right way. It is so beneficial for your body. So keep that in mind. Another thing that I like to do is sourdough bread. I like to make that at home. If you're looking into that, don't be afraid of it. I am not a baker. I get sourdough I started making a few months ago, and now I give it to my friends or family, and we have it every single morning. It just is a little bit easier to digest and break down, again, because it sits a little bit longer and, you know, has time to break down and all of that. Plus there's no added preservatives. So when it comes to bread, those are like some staples, milk, bread, and eggs. As far as going to the food store, one thing that I learned that I found really interesting and helpful is to shop the perimeter of the store and try to avoid those middle aisles as much as possible. So every food store, if you think of the layout, you have your produce and your meats and like all the things, all the healthier options, your dairy, all of that is going to be on the outside perimeter of the store. Everything in the middle is preservatives and in a box.
Processed.
Exactly. Yes. So just kind of be mindful of where you're spending most of your time, or in those aisles, or you're just kind of going around the perimeter. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Obviously, I like to use farmers markets or local farms whenever possible. Definitely, we're getting big into local farms for meat since we've moved to North Carolina. That was something that I know that they had in New Jersey, but we really didn't do. But yeah, we were starting to get our beef from local farms around here, and pork and all of that. Again, we have our own beef cattle that come this spring. We will be able to process, and we'll have our own that way too. But until then, we'll definitely be doing that. Obviously, it supports your local farmer, but again, a lot less steps. You're kind of cutting out that middleman. You're going right to consumer. So that I really like. As far as like, I think you'll hit on this a little bit more, but like diets or restrictions and things like that, I have never been able to follow a diet. I'm tall, I'm like 5'9" or 5'10", so I've never really had to lose weight so much. It was more like I wanted to tone up, or, you know, I'm a little soft and I would like to kind of, you know, just again put on a little bit of muscle or feel like myself again. So I would eat, you know, more protein shakes, or just kind of throw in whatever I could do. But it really wasn't until I found out what macros were that I started feeling a lot better through food. So with the macros, for me, macros are calories, protein, carbs, and fats. And you have, based on your goals and what you're trying to do with your body, lose weight, gain weight, maintain, you have set numbers that you should try to achieve every day. Now, the thing with macros is you could hit your macros every day, but be eating Oreos and ice cream and, oh, look, I hit my calories, or whatever the case may be. So macros are not, it's not a diet, it's more of a lifestyle, and it's more of just like a guide to maybe hold you accountable. So like when I follow and count my macros, I use a food log. So I use the First Form app for that, and I log what I'm eating every day, so it holds me accountable. I can kind of see I'm not just snacking mindlessly throughout the day, but also I'm like, okay, I'm a little short on protein, so maybe it's a protein shake, maybe it's steak, maybe it's egg whites, maybe it's something that I throw in to get the proper amount of protein for that day. Protein was probably where I was deficient the most in my diet. I think calories and fats and carbs, I was pretty good at hitting. I always undereat, just by nature, by being a busy mom. I kind of forget to go and eat and feed myself throughout the day. And that contributes to me being tired or getting a headache midday or all of these things. But protein, when I realized that you're supposed to have 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat per day, I honestly don't even think I was getting half of that.
Yeah.
And protein, I mean, you need it to survive, but also like your quality of life and just how you feel and how you get through a workout and how you get through a day is so much more sustainable. And I would feel so much better when I hit that protein goal. So if you're low on protein, and just not really sure if you're getting protein in your diet, that's something that you should start to look at a little bit more and just Google different foods that have protein in it. Like I had to do that. I was like, okay, well, yeah, like meat and eggs. Like I understood like a basic food pyramid type of a thing, which food pyramid is a whole other topic, it's lies. But so I had to figure out like, well, how much protein is in food and how do I count this stuff and how do I start to hold myself accountable to those things so I can feel my best.
Not eat the same thing every single day.
Yes, oh, so boring. I can't just have grilled chicken every day all day. That's not my thing either. So just basically learning about my macros, finding an app that works for you to kind of track that so that you can, see where you're at throughout the day, but then also hold yourself accountable. That really helped me because I, again, wasn't crashing midday, wasn't as tired, started feeling better, and was actually able to put on more muscle when I wanted to. It became a little bit easier, right? So that's pretty much everything that I have on food. The one quote or saying that I heard years ago that has stuck with me the most, and like if you take nothing else away from the podcast, at least on my half that I talk about today, try to remember this, is that everything you put in your mouth is either a vote for health or a vote for disease.
Right.
And that really, really stuck with me. And I was like, wow. So every time, if I'm looking through the cabinet and I'm about to grab a snack, that quote just kind of comes in my head. I'm like, maybe we'll do an apple or egg whites. What do I need? What do I need to hit my macros that day? Instead of just a mindless, empty snack. Yep. So that's kind of what I have. I'm going to pass it off to Danielle. She is a little more knowledgeable in this field. You were getting like a nutritional license, right? Like you're going for
so
that.
I'm in almost halfway through a holistic nutritionist course. So so I have that, and then I've also been, like we said, transitioning and eating better was one of the very first things that we did. Let's see. I have so one thing I wanted to say, I have all these thoughts, so I can't collect them. I'm like, you said this and I want to comment on that. One thing that you touched on was you didn't eat enough. And I think that is like a common problem for most people, especially women, where you have this mindset of like, I want to lose weight or I want to do this. And so it's a very restrictive mindset of the only way I can do that is by not eating.
Starving.
Or, I'm so busy, I'm just going to skip breakfast. Right? And for women especially, like the intermittent fasting thing, look into it. But for women, I would not recommend, and I wouldn't say.
Tell my husband that it works for him, and then I'm like, it's not for me.
and that's the thing with we're not going to get into diets, but that is the thing with a lot of these like fad diets, and a lot of the studies that support them were based on men. Men and women's biology is different, and the way that women's bodies are meant to do things that men's bodies aren't. We're supposed to have a little bit more weight on our bodies to support growing a child, and even if that's not something that you are ever interested in doing, like you still need your hormones to be in specific levels, and the way that happens is with the food that you eat. Like it's such a huge thing that has like this big trickle down where if you're starving yourself, like you're literally starving yourself, you're starving your cells, you're doing all these
that's like
things to your body.
Who are malnourished, stop getting their period. Like that's a thing that I've heard stories of. Like if certain people suffer with bulimia or anorexia, any of those things, I've heard that's one of the first things that happens is they're like, their hair falls out or I stopped getting my period. Yeah. So that makes sense that it is connected to your hormones.
You having way too much weight on your body can have an impact on your fertility, but also, and that's the thing, like just because you're skinny doesn't mean that you're healthy, especially if you're super, super skinny like that. That can have a huge impact on your health also. So,
that's good.
Not tangents that I plan on going, but they do come up. So, I have a quote also. So it's by Michael Pollan, and it's called, he says, and this is kind of what we base we also don't do like a specific diet or whatever. But this is kind of how we go is eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. And I think mostly plants has turned into plant-based for a lot of the things, even the things that I'm reading in my nutritionist course. I'm like, I don't agree with that. I'm going to take this information, but a lot of the information that is out there is like biased, and that's a whole thing too. But we do need a variety of food from a variety of sources, and like I said, you can't just eat chicken breast and white rice every day. You're missing out. You need to eat the rainbow. Like every food group and every color has so many important little micronutrients that if you're only eating yogurt with strawberries in the morning and then that's what you eat every single morning, you're only getting a small portion of what's out there. So variety and real foods, and honestly, if you're eating like real good whole foods like fruits and vegetables and protein and all these non-processed things, like you can eat as much as you want, and it's gonna be totally different than if you eat 12 Big Macs a week. You're gonna get a lot more out of it nutrition-wise. So, and then we touched on like fad diets a little bit, but I just wanted to say that they're not sustainable, and that's why it doesn't usually end up working, or you start to see results right away because say you live on fast food and then all of a sudden you go vegetarian or you go vegan and you're like, I feel amazing. Well, that's because you're eating real food for the first time in how many years. Of course you're going to feel good, but your body just can't sustain that. And nothing, like some people have lifelong success being a vegetarian or being a vegan, but that doesn't mean that everybody is, and that doesn't mean that everyone should. Like nothing is one size fits all. And so getting in the mindset of this worked for me, intermittent fasting works for me, so everybody needs to do it. Like that's just not sustainable either. And if something is too restrictive or too extreme, like you can't do, like you should never eat this, like even with like dairy's so inflammatory and bad for you. Like, well, let's take a step back. Let's look at those studies. Dairy, let's look at the quality, and that's a huge thing in this one book that I'm reading that I won't say the name of, but it's like it's very opinionated and it's a very doesn't touch on quality whatsoever. And I'm like, well, that's why. Yes, it's so important. Like just going through the different classifications of eggs, you're like, oh wow, that makes a huge sense. And it's like with everything. So, and the main thing is listen to your body, because you can definitely be sensitive to things. Also, it could be quality, like a lot of wheat or gluten intolerances. Like there's definitely, like we have someone in our family who has celiac disease, and she 100% cannot, like she can't. But she has a medical reason behind it that's valid, not that whatever, but a lot of the thing is quality. Like people can go who have like gluten sensitivities in America, they go to Europe and they eat gluten there and they're totally fine. Well, what's different between European standards of food and American standards of food is huge. Do you have a wheat intolerance or do you have a glyphosate intolerance? And glyphosate is a very toxic pesticide that is heavily sprayed on a lot of our food, and that's where, again, the quality thing comes in. So listen to your body. If you're having, if you notice that like I eat this thing and I have this reaction, then maybe don't eat that thing. But that doesn't mean that you need to go on this like crazy restrictive diet. And it doesn't mean that you can't heal your body also. Let's see. So I also wanted to touch on, because this is something that we went through not too long ago. Oh, I guess a year ago, because Sage is 18 months, so a year ago she was 6 months and we were starting to feed her real food. So we did baby-led weaning, which I think is a lot of people are kind of starting to do. We totally skipped like rice cereal and all those things. Like, no, that's not necessarily good. And we just went straight to real food.
We did that too, I didn't know it was called anything. And I was just like, no, we're gonna do this. It just felt, that was like a gut thing.
It's like a natural thing that people have probably been doing forever. Thought I was
crazy and that she was gonna starve, and I was like, she likes fruit though, so I think we're good.
I think we're good, as long as it's, the right consistency for how many teeth they do or don't have. Like, I read a really good book about it. And there's a ton of information. There's a ton of Instagram, like good Instagram accounts, and we can add some of those links in the show notes. But what we really liked about it was, number one, it was easier, because we could just, whatever we were eating, we could modify and prepare it maybe a little bit differently for her, and so it took that out. We didn't have to spend any extra money on baby food, and she's eating what you were eating while you were eating. Like, of course, you have to help sometimes, but at the very beginning, they're not even really eating that much. They're just kind of playing, and they're learning the textures, and they're, they're just like experiencing the food. Maybe they get some of it in their mouth, maybe they don't. It's not a big deal. That also helps to avoid like picky eating and like texture sensitivities. Like some kids can't, even some adults still can't handle like certain textures of food. So just like not experiencing them, exposing them to all these different things from such a young age is so beneficial. Avoiding picky eating, helping them to just our nutrition is a huge thing with me. Even before I did the nutrition, even before I decided I was going to do that, nutrition was a huge thing with me because they're so little and their bodies are going through so much change and they're growing so much, and they need the fuel. Their bodies need like good nutritious food. So that is one thing that I'm like, no. If we go to someone's house and they're like, can she? I'm like, no, she cannot. Like, I am such a stickler, because this is like the foundation of the rest of her life. How her body's going to develop and how she's going to, be able to, like the foundation of her eating and her making healthy choices. Right. So of course, like if I were to feed her like junk, of course she's going to like it. Of course she's going to. That doesn't mean that it's the right choice for her. That doesn't mean that it's appropriate at her age. Is she going to grow up and eat junk? I'm sure she is. And the older that she gets, we I don't even want to say we slack. Like, we still buy especially if it's for her, I make sure that it's like good. But that's something that I have here too, is there are healthier alternatives for like almost everything. Snacks. If you like snacks and you're just like, I just want to have this snack still, there's a healthier option for that. If you really have like these favorite recipes of yours and that's what's holding you back from like changing your food lifestyle, like you can, there's healthier versions of that same recipe. Like, it's so easy to just, you literally have a supercomputer in your hand at all times on your phone, and there's so much content out there that it doesn't have to be this like, you don't have to figure it out on your own. You don't have to create these recipes on your own.
And a lot of them are free. Like, a lot of this content that's out there nowadays is free. Just whether it's the recipe itself or learning how to make something, you know what I mean? Like, all this stuff is out there mostly for free. So I feel like we can't really use that excuse anymore. Like, oh, I don't know how, or I want to do that, but that was expensive. It's like, well,
is it though?
Yeah.
Did you just not put the work into it? Yeah. But also, I mean, there's organic versions of Oreos, and there's organic candy, or there's candy that doesn't have food dyes. And you're like, oh, this is healthy. Like, okay, it's a healthier version of something that's still not very healthy. So just remembering that, like, oh, well, I found this loophole. Like,
I've used that. Totally guilty. I've 100% used that before. Our friend Corey McGregor, he lives back in New Jersey. He's one of our best friends, and I remember when I was getting still like new into the whole health thing. I think I bumped into him in Whole Foods or something one day, and of course he glanced down in my car, and instantly I was like, oh, busted. I knew it. I was like, oh man. And it was like these little mini Oreo looking type of cookies, and he picked them up and he just kind of looked at me. I was like, they're organic, and he just he was like, stay. So I'm like, I'm still buying that. I gently grabbed them back. I was like, I'm still buying them, but I hear you. But yeah, so I used to be a really big nighttime snacker. I thankfully, that took years, but over the years have kind of changed that. But yeah, instead of having an actual box of Oreos, I would have these little Nature's Choice or whatever, with just less bad stuff, right?
Right.
Not as bad
It's
stuff.
a transitional
It's still pure sugar
thing,
and all the things, but kind of like what you said, you don't have to go all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of middle ground, and then I feel like the more you kind of allow yourself the grace of being in that middle ground, the more you over time naturally get to that really clean spot, right? Because it's almost more of like a slow cleanse, you know, of switching your life up. Yeah, and I think then it's more sustainable rather than just
scary.
wiping out your whole kitchen and trying to start fresh.
And I think really, especially in the beginning, like that's like the main thing that we wanted to touch on is not getting super specific about our topics, but just like it's so much easier than it doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming, okay, we're starting from scratch, toss everything out, we're not doing that, like cold turkey, like that might work for some people, but it's not gonna work for everybody, and it's okay. And if you need to slowly do these transitional things, then I mean, eating an organic Oreo versus eating an Oreo, we're gonna get like in trouble for that. Is better.
Even and just as delicious. I can attest to that. The organic Oreo did not disappoint, so grab you some of those.
And it doesn't have to be this like all like you don't have to like you're not munching on kale every day. Like,
carrot sticks.
Yeah. It is not that. Let's see. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was the assumption that like, okay, I can't afford to eat that way. I can't afford to eat organic, or I can't afford to like healthy food is more expensive, or you know, all those things. So ways that you can save money while still being able to eat better. Batch cooking, which is something that I used to do a lot of before Sage, and now I don't. But just like making a lot of your food ahead of time for the week, and this works like especially well. Yeah, like batch cooking, meal prepping. Yeah, so especially well if you're like busy and you're working. So dedicate a couple hours on Sunday. Get your groceries on Saturday. Dedicate a couple hours on Sunday and cook up a bunch of protein. Cook up some carbs. Like pre-chop your vegetables, your fruits, whatever, so that it's easy to just like grab that lunch and go out the door Monday morning or Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, instead of like, oh man, I didn't have time last night, I'm just gonna run through the drive-through because I don't have anything for lunch, or I'm just not gonna eat lunch then, and then you're gonna, you know, so that's something that is really easy and really sustainable to do. Something that we're doing right now, which is beneficial because it's winter, so your farmers markets aren't open, your garden isn't producing anymore if you have a garden, you don't have the access to maybe as much like fresh produce, is the frozen section. So frozen organic fruits and vegetables, very affordable. The nutrient quality is really good, sometimes even better than what's fresh in the produce section, because it had to be picked to get to the produce section, then it drove on a truck, and then it's been sitting there, you don't know how long. Whereas like frozen things are usually flash frozen at like their peak of freshness and ripeness, so the nutrient quality is there, you don't lose that with it being frozen. And so it's really kind of like an easy, sustainable thing to do. Let's see. And then something that we do is we plan out our meals. We have a shared note between me and my husband on our phones, and we plan out our meals for the week. So I literally at the bottom, I have like grocery list, and then I have like which section of the grocery store I can find the thing, like very organized.
Can you come do this for me?
Because it just makes it so much easier. And then at the bottom is like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we just go through and pick out like this is what we're gonna have for dinner these nights. And then I can look through my pantry, look through my fridge, look through my freezer, see what I have. Okay, I don't have this goes on the grocery list. And I build my grocery list from there. So we're already, like, we know what we're gonna be eating. So it's not like, oh, I didn't take anything out for dinner, you didn't take anything out for dinner, I don't really wanna cook, let's get takeout. So it takes that out of the equation, which is nice, which also saves you money, because spending $40 eating out is totally different than $40 and you're gonna get more food at the grocery store for $40. So,
or you can move to the middle of nowhere like me and they don't deliver to your house. So we've saved a ton of money. My husband's like, wow, looking out. I'm like, because we can't. They won't
Where
come
do
to
we
me.
go?
Yeah, I tried. They all told me no. So that's, yeah, you can do that too.
So that's what we do, and then it really helps to stay accountable also at the grocery store. You don't have that like, oh, this is something that I want, like stick to your list.
Yeah.
And usually I figured out like, okay, I'm gonna spend probably this much at the grocery store because this is like how we shop. So that has been super helpful for us. And then another thing is like buying whole things, like whole chickens especially. Like you can buy a whole chicken, a whole organic chicken for like $5 a pound. Like it's so cheap. Throw it in your crock pot, or if you have a roasting pan in your oven, and you can do so many things with that. Like, or if you don't have the time or don't have the want to cook, you can buy the already cooked rotisserie chickens. And if you buy them like the like original, so they're not like seasoned and flavored with all like the extra stuff, and you can buy organic that way too.
Some say like antibiotic free. I've seen.
Publix has like organic whole chicken, so if you can get that, take it home and just shred it, and then you have a protein either as like a snack or to put on a salad or whatever. Like you can make meals out of that, and it's so cheap.
And it usually gets us like cheap. If we do that for dinner one night, we definitely have lunch the next day, or again maybe dinner the following night. Like that definitely gets us 2 to 3 meals, 2 adults.
And you can even then take the carcass and make bone broth. Like there's so many things that you can do to make it worth the like $5, like $10 investment. And then you touched a little bit on like, if you don't have your own beef cows, you can find a local farm and you can do like a cow sharing thing where, so my parents have beef cows, and we'll buy a quarter of a cow. And so it's, you get like they hang the meat, whatever the hang weight of the meat is, you get a quarter of that, and the butcher calls you and it's like, how many pounds of steak do you want? What cut do you want? You can choose, like it's very customizable. How many pounds of ground beef? Do you want roast? Do you want this? Do you want any organ meats? Do you want bones for soup or bone broth? Like it's a little bit more of an upfront investment, but if you were to, piece all those things out of the grocery store, you're saving hundreds of dollars. So something where if you can prioritize and you can save a little bit for that is a huge, huge investment that's going to be so much better for you. And then if you can't do that, like we touched on, and it's, the right season, you can do farmers markets and local farms. And the benefit of those things also is you get to know your farmer. So the organic label is great in the grocery store, but looking into it a little bit, it's very expensive. And so sometimes these small local farms, they're doing all the right things, but they're just not going to invest $10,000 every single year to be able to put that label on their food. Doesn't mean that it's not good, it's probably better, but it is a very expensive thing just to have the label. So if you can talk to your local farmer and know, and like especially if they're really, really good and they don't have anything to hide, they're gonna let you come to their farm and meet their animals and take a tour and walk around, and you can see, and they're the nicest people, and they want to tell you all the things, and you learn so much, and it's just a really cool experience too, and it really brings it back. We're so separated from our food. We don't know, nobody knows what food looks like as it's growing naturally. They don't know how to grow their own food. They don't know, like we're so separated, and that makes it really easy to just grab that bag of chips versus grabbing the apple or whatever. And so those are things that we think are really, really important. Food is the building block of your entire life. So if you're going to prioritize anything, definitely making food at the top of that list, I think, is huge. And you're going to see so many big and small changes and benefits from just that.
Absolutely. And I love how you hit on how we're so removed from our food source nowadays. Like, again, I lived in New Jersey, did not have beef cattle. Moved to North Carolina, got beef cattle, and I cannot tell you how many messages on Instagram and Facebook and from friends and family that are like, you're not going to eat them, right? I'm like, okay, that's weird. Like, we had steak the night before I left, like you and I together. So, like, people who eat meat but can't seem to wrap their head around the fact that we are humanely and organically and cleanly raising these animals and are going to use every single piece of that animal and put it to good use and give it an amazing life. Like, I go out there and talk to these guys and like tell them to have a good day and like all of the things, like they are loved. They're running around like playing and living their best lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that is serving a purpose.
Right.
But you know, not being okay with that, but being okay with going out to dinner or ordering a steak.
Yeah,
you know,
seeing
it's,
all the meat cuts at the butcher, at the grocery store, like that used to be a cow.
That was the thing at one point.
Who probably didn't have a great quality of life.
Exactly, and who knows what put in it. So, so yes, I'm kind of happy that you hit on that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of information for you guys to kind of put out there, but hopefully we were able to present it, in a digestible way, no pun intended. But yeah, just kind of, you know, to sum it up, you know, read your labels, make connections with where you're getting your food and who you're getting your food from. Anything that you can grow or source or anything from your own home, I suggest going on YouTube and learning how to do those things. I mean, there's nothing better than homegrown and learning how to do it yourself. You definitely appreciate it more and use it more and have less waste that way. And yeah, just make sure you're, you know, just getting those whole foods in your body. You know, treat food as like medicine. You know, whatever you put in your mouth is a vote for health or a vote for disease. And just start, again, reading the labels and reading into things and just really not so mindlessly consuming, right? And vote with your dollars, you know. If you want more good food and you want to see more good things being put in your stores, stop buying all the crud, right? Start buying that good stuff and voting that way. But that's pretty much it. I think that kind of hits on it. We'll definitely dive into nutrition and kind of break these things down. Again, I could do a whole episode on raw milk, you know, so we'll get more into detail on this stuff, but this was just kind of a dump of everything we wanted to get out to you guys. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned next week where we're going to talk about setting healthy boundaries. So that's it, you guys. I hope you have a good week and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Woohoo!